It's not another Buffalo podcast. Hosted by three of the most underqualified sports personalities this side of the canal. With John, Pat, and Brando. On Buffalo Rumblings.
All right. Welcome back to
Sorry.
Not Another Buffalo podcast. It's man, I'm so deflated. I don't even know.
There's no words. We're talking about the Bills on this podcast today. If you didn't catch the memo.
Yeah.
The sad intro. The womp womp womp.
I don't even know what I'm going to do for the intro of this podcast because obviously I'll figure that out in post, but I feel like it's cruel to make people listen to our obnoxious intros with our like funny clips. So I don't know what am I going to put, like organ music in the beginning or something. I don't know what I'm going to do.
That's funny.
But
organ music.
I don't want to sit here and act like somebody died, but I mean it's kind of dire.
So maybe not Amazing Grace.
Yeah. Anyway, well, before we get into the Bills and the absurdly complex who's to blame finger pointing, Brando, you had a pretty good moment at the stadium yesterday, and you called me right after, and that was definitely the high point of my day afterwards. I did not know that the Bills would go on to completely ruin it after that.
Yeah. Oh, it was cool. The stadium's fun. Every day, like these games, I'm going to prefix this. I'm going to play my small little violin, right? We have a good gig here, right? We get to talk about the Bills. I get to go to the games, and I always try to keep that into perspective on the night. Like, the night games are hard. We work all day. I worked 20 hours yesterday, and, we come and we do these shows 8, 9 o'clock at night after working from 7 a.m. You and I scarfing down dinner, hopping on the pod to talk some BS game that we just watched and we paid money to go to, or you pay for Sunday ticket because you live out of town, and there's a lot that goes into this, and it's not always easy. So I'm at the stadium yesterday, and I'm standing there with my wheelchair by a garbage can, and I'm just looking around, and somebody yelled, "Brando!" And I'm like, that is my name. So I'm looking around. I'm like, "Brando!" And this couple comes up to me, and they're like, "We are huge fans of your podcast." And I was like, "What? Oh, our show? Like on Buffalo Rumblings?" And they're like, "Not another Buffalo." Yeah. They're like, "But we're not just fans. We're like OG fans. Like we go back 2 years. Like we've liked your show so much." And they were so nice. They're from the Adirondacks. They drive in to the game, and they're like, "We listen to podcasts all the time." And they're like, "We love your show." And they're like, "We love Pat. We love John. We love Brando." And he's like, "Tell Pat we miss him when he's not here." And they're just so nice. And they, we took a picture. I signed the lady's purse. I've never had to do that before. Actually, that's not true. This is the first time anybody over the age of 7 has asked me for their autograph, because the kindergartners do it all the time. But
that's funny.
It was really cool to have a nice interaction.
Brando's a teacher, by the way. Brando's a teacher.
Yeah, I work with kids. I don't just give out autographs to kids. That's funny. But
yeah,
the vibe at the stadium yesterday was good before the game, and this just made it even better. And I was so flustered, dude. I don't remember their names. I didn't get their names. I was like so taken back by the whole thing. They were very, very nice people. Thank you for listening. It makes, talking about a part of my language shit show of a game last night a little bit easier when we know that, we're all in this together. Everybody feels like garbage today on a Tuesday morning in Buffalo. If you had to go to work today, I'm so sorry. And, it's no fun today, and everybody's in it together. But it was cool to have a really nice interaction with some fans and listeners. So thank you for listening. But I'm sorry you had to watch that dumpster fire yesterday. You drive all the way in from the Adirondacks, and anybody who came from anywhere had to watch that game yesterday. Is just like just so stupid. And
yeah,
I mean, even from the beginning, like you take the ball after you win the coin toss, boom, analytics department, it's like, bad decision, coach, bad decision from the get-go. And then you throw the first play of the game. I'm watching, I'm like, he's down. That's a fumble. That's not a fumble. And then I'm like, wait a minute. That's a fumble. Well, good start, boys. The analytic department's just standing there like, I told you, coach. Like, now we're screwed. I think, your percentage of winning, like, that's a remarkable decrease from, like, just to receive the ball lowers your percentage of winning, but then to fumble on your first snap and to give up points and to know the Broncos are going to get the ball back, like you drop a decent. I would like to see that probability chart of the line graph. It's like,
oh my God,
the Bills are at like 55 and then one play down to like 38 or whatever it is. But
yeah, I don't know. It probably looks a little bit like my EKG would have looked during that game as that was going on. But last night was weird. I was just in disbelief. Like other Bills losses, I have been like storming around, pacing, just so mad. And I'm at a complete loss of words with where the Bills are at. And in contemplating this, it's like, who do you point the finger at? Because obviously everybody who talks Bills is pointing the blame finger at somebody, something. And there's lots of, pick a name out of the hat, Ken Dorsey, Sean McDermott, scheme, the quarterback throwing interceptions, fumbles, bad play calling. It's like take your pick. And the hardest part about it is it's all of it. Everything is going wrong, or everything that can go wrong is going wrong. Yeah. And on top of that, you're not making the best decisions to put your team in a position to win anyway. And I think that partially falls on McDermott, that partially falls on Dorsey, that partially falls on Allen. It was almost inexplicable at a certain point last night because it wasn't just Gabe Davis dropping the ball like he has before. And, it kind of confirms priors for those people who have seen that from Gabe, and Gabe has had drop problems in the past. And obviously that one resulted in a terrible flip of the field when you were planning on getting points there. You're in the red zone. And Dalton Kincaid has a drop a couple drives later that's similar. He had it in his hands over the middle.
Man. Dude, I was watching that.
Kincaid's one of the surest-handed people on the team. And sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but Diggs had a drop too. Does this team have the yips? I think everything that could go wrong is going wrong. And I don't know. I can't sit here. It would be easier if it was Ken Dorsey's the problem. Let's fire Ken Dorsey, figure out something, and then something will click. And, big changes sometimes can help if there's like one problem. Like if you're the Raiders, Josh McDaniels was the problem. You got rid of him, your team's already better, and they're enjoying who they're working for. But there's no sweeping change that you can make that's going to make a difference this year. Might be able to do it in the offseason, but you're not going to fire McDermott and get a better result than you would have if he was still here. You're not going to fire Dorsey and get a better result this year. What can you do that says, we're making a change, we're going to point this thing in the right direction? Because they've had so many opportunities for a get-right game this year, and they had a quick stretch there, which is the only reason they have 5 wins. But are you going to get right against the defense next week, who notoriously holds you to few points and lots of turnovers after you turn the ball over 4 times against a defense that doesn't get turnovers and let up 70 previously this year?
Yeah.
And I get it. They're a different defense. They kept Kansas City to 9. And that's not going to make me feel any better about the way the Bills played yesterday. But I don't know. Do they need Dr. Sharon from Ted Lasso to come in and help Danny Rojas with the yips?
Yeah.
Because I feel like this literally gets into like team psychology and stuff like this.
I think you're in a huge hole of team psychology right now because not only I think we're past the point of it being the yips. This started after Thanksgiving last year where they just looked broken. So not only are we in a sample size of 18 plus games right now of poor offensive football, but you're in a Super Bowl window. These games are so valuable. Each one of them is so important, and you're just really stuck because I wish we could just cut what I said last week about this team and put it in this week because we are nuclear, man. Like right now we went from like a pinhole leak on a submarine to now the nuclear reactor is overheating because the pump's not working or some crap like that, and if you look for the blame in my brain this morning, I'm trying to map out how I want to talk about it with you, and I'm thinking about it as like an org chart, and Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are at the top together. Brandon Beane doesn't have the autonomy to fire Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott was hired before Brandon Beane, and they've been 1A and 1B together. But I want to look at it boots on the ground first because you have fumbles, you have drops, you have interceptions, you have players not executing to their ability. Maybe that is their ability is what they're showing us, right? They've shown us enough now. The only players, that are going against what we know that they can do is Steph Diggs. Steph Diggs, 3 for 35 or 36 yesterday, contained by a good young corner who it would have been. I'm glad we don't trade our first round pick because we might have a top 10 pick this year in a good draft, but we have a lot of time to talk about the draft. Not now, but
yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm mad at Dorsey for a little bit, but I'm not even mad at Dorsey today because if you add in all of the drops, all the fumbles, and Josh's bad plays, it's more on the players. But that is a reflection in the coordinator himself because if your players aren't performing like they have before under somebody else, you're the variable, right? You're the odd man out. It's like you step in anywhere, anybody in any job ever, you replace somebody, that's your baseline, right? That's if you're doing this much better than who was here before you, you're great. And if you're doing that much, that's your baseline. And Ken Dorsey is below the baseline, but you look at the concepts. Dan Orlovsky, I don't know if you see it, was making its rounds on Twitter this morning, his breakdown of the fourth down play, just how blah it is, being in shotgun so much. They did it on the 2-point conversion too. You're putting yourself 5 yards behind the goal of what you need for yardage. And Josh has thrown the same interception maybe 6 or 7 times this year now on those outside receivers, making the break up the sideline, whether it's an option route. He's missing it by a little bit, but that little bit is all the defenders need. So
and they just know that he's going to throw that. The arm arrogance has kind of left the arm behind in that saying. Like, it's just arrogance at some point. And
yeah. Well, do you remember the rant? I was like freaking out, and I came on and apologized for it. The guy tweets at us a couple times. He talks about it. That should be revisited, right? Because these turnovers are for what? Like, what are these conversations like with Josh? Why are you doing this? Because nobody's open? You don't like the play call? Check out of it at the line of scrimmage. You throw it away. You don't have to do this. Like, we are a good football team. So you get to that point with Dorsey where the scheme's not great, and the players that are open are the ones he's missing, and he's not reading it right.
But there's so many other forces tugging at Josh too, because it's like on this hand you have the deep route receiver on that levels concept was not the right choice to even throw that pass, the interception. You had a guy underneath who was open. Like, take the yards that you're giving you, and then you have the rest of everything in the analytics, like we're having this huge discussion about why the Bills' EPA for play is so high and they're not converting on drives because the lack of explosive plays is one of the biggest reasons for that. So you have every other voice in Josh Allen's ear, and I don't know how much he hears of this from Ken Dorsey, from the team, from outside things. I have no idea. But there's a need, and I'm sure the team just recognizes itself without us, armchair quarterbacks sitting back here spouting. He realizes that they need more explosive plays. They need chunk plays because, you can't just expect to drive 14 plays down the field every single time you want to score a touchdown. Sometimes you need 6-play drives. You need 4-play drives. You need these explosive plays because, as we've seen, 14 plays is a lot of plays for 11 guys not to mess up. And 3 plays
reduce
has been
your margin of error, right?
Right, exactly. You have less opportunities for a ball carrier to fumble, a tipped pass to go for an interception.
Yeah,
and I don't want to overreact to the Gabe Davis interception. That's so frustrating. But the same thing could have happened to Dalton Kincaid, after that.
Okay, here's where I get a little bit fired up as a coach myself. There are things that you hammer your players for and things that you don't hammer your players for. If you fumble
for the first time this season,
call me whatever you want here, man. There should be some repercussion. He doesn't have to be benched for a quarter. Bench him for 4 plays.
Yeah,
he should be benched.
A drive.
Say something to him. Sit him down. Be like, yo, you got $110 gloves on, dude. Go down or figure a way out. Don't fumble that football. There's an action and there's a consequence. If a kid does something, you punish him for it. But so everybody getting mad about McDermott benching Cook, I get it. He's a weapon. Murray didn't play bad in his absence, though. So right, we didn't play terrible.
Murray had a couple of good runs, but you could tell Murray has his role as a first down running back.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the play where they checked it down to Murray in a play that was clearly not necessarily schemed up for James
He
Cook.
dropped it.
I don't know. He might have dropped one. I'm talking about the one where he gets a pass and then he's got open field in front of him except for a nose tackle.
He gets tackled.
He can't beat a nose tackle. James Cook has taken that ball for 22 yards. And if your first pass was going to James Cook, he's probably a big part of your game plan. And you kind of saw that later on. Like, he was the best thing that they had going in this entire game. None of the wide receivers, even better than Kincaid, who led them in targets and probably yards too.
I think Davis had the yardage, 52.
He might have, yeah. By the way, Davis, 6 targets, 2 receptions. That 0.5 receptions killed my parlay. But, whatever. That's
Talk about
neither here or there. Like,
the part that gets me, though, is if you're going to bench Cook for whatever amount of plays it is, I don't care if it's 2 or 4, but it shouldn't be more than 5. You need to be consistent in how you treat your other players. Gabe Davis drops it in his freaking hands, and it turns the ball over. Sit him down. He's a captain. Sit him down. You did something wrong. It's okay, but you're going to watch for a minute because we have other players that deserve a chance now because you're obviously, we did this already and it didn't work, and you've shown a track record of doing this. You led the league in drops. You led the league in drop percentage. You run hard routes. I understand Josh throws missiles, and that's what I was going to say about Kincaid's drop. Is I watched that, like, I think I could hear the ball from the upper deck when Josh threw it about how fast that ball was on Kincaid. I was, whoa. Like, it's just, there's plays that Josh makes like that, and you're like, my hands going up to the upper deck if it's the ball. So I say it as you want. He's an NFL player. You got to catch the ball, but I'm going to give Kincaid a little grace only because of the way the game plan came out. But Gabe Davis is a captain on your team. Sit him down for dropping the ball. If you're going to bench Cook, then bench Gabe Davis. If you're going to be mad, and then you got Josh being all reckless, sit him down. See somebody. Kyle Allen, go hand the ball off, all right? One play, man. Josh, sit your butt down here. Think about it for a second. No, obviously, you're not going to do that, but you need to be consistent in the way that you treat these guys. And I don't know. I've said it. You treat your superstars like superstars, and you treat your bench players like bench players. But when your superstars are playing like bench players, then you have to sit them down. And maybe this is a conversation to be had with Von as well. I know he's trying to play into shape. I have no negative comments about Von Miller until after Thanksgiving. I don't care if he's out there and he's a statue. I will not say anything bad about Von Miller until 1 year after his ACL surgery because it takes so long to come back from that. Breaking news. We're breaking it right here, right now. Ken Dorsey fired.
Wow.
Bills promote Joel Brady to offensive coordinator. Breaking news right here again. Ken Dorsey fired.
I have a lot to say about this. I have notes about this because just having this talked about as a possibility, and this is a continuation, and this cements a pattern with the Bills, and I don't like it.
Oh.
I don't. Well, I don't know how I feel about Ken Dorsey being fired right now. I need to think about that for a second, but I don't like the pattern. I really don't. Do you know what the pattern is that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's the scapegoat pattern.
Special teams coach, fired, 13 seconds. McDermott, what did you want to run?
Frazier was the next one. This is the trifecta.
Yeah.
This is
all of them. This is everybody under McDermott has been fired now. This is it, but this is the part of it where this is the final part on the organizational chart that I'm getting to, right? The players make bad plays. The offensive coordinator's not ready. He's young. He's in a Super Bowl window, and your players are not making good plays. Okay, now the offensive coordinator needs help. If I am struggling as a teacher, my principal needs to help me develop professionally. My head coach needs to be like, hey, Ken, you've put together this body of work here. Let's do something. All right, we switched to 12 personnel. It's not working. Let's do something different. 11 personnel. Okay, it worked. Oh, you're not going to go up tempo. Oh, it worked, but you're not going to do it. Okay, well, boom. Now you're on McDermott. Now it's on to him. Because if I am doing so bad as a teacher and the students go home and tell their parents, the parents call the principal. They don't call me, right? Some of them do, but some of them will call they go to my boss, and he's held accountable for everybody's actions below him. So McDermott needs to understand that here, and guess what? Now there's nobody else. There's nobody else around McDermott to blame anything on. And if he didn't do this, he sounded like a guy in his press conference yesterday that was like, I did my job, guys. I didn't do anything wrong.
I didn't like that attitude. I don't care if you think that it's 100% the other guy's fault. Your job as the head coach is to go up there and say it starts with me. And that's what he's done for most of his career. But
have your guy ready. And if you don't, it's your fault. It's by default. I don't care. It sucks, happenstance. But the way that he's setting it up is just this a whole accountability thing, and not taking it after the 13 seconds, not giving your diehard fans a snippet of, hey, I called squib. It didn't make it down there. The chain of command, I radioed it to the special teams coordinator. Special teams coordinator couldn't run it over to Tyler Bass in time. Just tell us. That's fine. The game plan against the Bengals. Yeah, Leslie Frazier wanted to play soft. I wanted to play aggressively. We didn't see eye to eye. We just had to go our own way. And now you see this with the offense and this run game argument, pass game argument, and now we're seeing adversity. This is real. And this is where the culture is going to get pushed, right? It's super easy to have a good culture when you're 13-3. It's super easy to have a good culture when you're winning playoff games. We're going to see the true colors of these guys one way or another here, because you're getting punched in the freaking face. You've gotten punched in the face. You got a broken nose. You're missing your front tooth, and you still need to stand up and smile and say, "Let's go, Jets!" Like, we have to do this because we can still win. We've gone on an 8-game win streak. We've gone on these huge benders, and you have to stand up here. And if you have a culture, Von Miller comes here because of how strong the locker room is. Josh Allen talks about how he loves these guys, and Sean McDermott talks about yada, yada, yada. You have to show us now. And by firing Ken, I don't know, did you see the sign on Twitter? A fan brought it in, and it was, all I want for Christmas is Ken Dorsey to be fired, and Tim Settle signed it.
What?
Yesterday at the Bills game.
I didn't see that, no.
Yeah, I thought that's a little crazy.
That's weird. I mean, do you think that was there any sign that the players didn't like Ken Dorsey? I mean, the whole reason he has this job is because Josh Allen wanted him to, right?
Yeah.
They had to get Josh Allen's nod of approval, and if Josh wasn't comfortable with him getting promoted, then they would have gone elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But I think you're seeing this too. I think it's a good idea because what you had doesn't work. It's kind of like you're test running your quarterback once you're eliminated from the playoffs, right? What do we have here? Joe Brady led the best college football offense of all time with Joe Burrow, and you have Mike Shula, right? Mike Shula's the guy that works with him in the booth. So you have a little bit of young, a little bit of older. You have to see. You have to try it. But Joe Brady was new last year. Is he going to have new ideas than Ken? Can he do it better? Because this is always so interesting to me, right? We talk about McDermott taking over defensive play calling. He's openly saying, I can do it better than Leslie Frazier.
Does this mean that McDermott is going to have his paws more in the offense than he already did?
Yes, definitely. I think absolutely.
Jeremy mentioned this morning in this quick clip that I listened to. I just listened to the first hour of the show this morning, and this is obviously before Dorsey was fired. And I worry about the same thing. I think I've said it on the show before. I'm worried that McDermott takes the wrong lesson out of this, because the lesson is not that I don't think that you can point a finger at one thing and say, hey, this is the problem. And I hope I'm wrong. Maybe I guess now that they have fired Dorsey, you kind of hope that maybe that does solve something, or at least makes a change within a team. And I don't know. I guess they needed to change something. They needed to do something drastic if they're going to make the playoffs this year. Yeah. And I don't know. I tried pulling up the playoff machine today. It doesn't work yet. They don't post it until late November, December, because there's so many games remaining.
They did that for the Times one though, and it's.
I know what their odds are. Okay. I'm trying to actually look like, okay, if all the favored teams, which even that doesn't work. You try to plug in some games and figure out the AFC is pretty muddled, right? And so it's hard to predict how many games a team will win because they're playing each other. So it's like those two things are causational. It's not like, oh, the Browns and the Ravens are both going to win 7 more games or something like that because they play each other. But the division teams play each other again. You play the Jets again. You play the Dolphins. You're probably not going to catch the Dolphins in the division, but can you sneak in at 10-7? Can we pick 5 wins? Let's say this team. I don't even want to look at the schedule and pick wins because it's like
You can't. There's no. You could lose every one of them, or you could win every one of them. We don't know.
I think at this point of the season, we're beyond looking at the opponent, and we're more looking inwards at this team. Like the amount of games that this team wins has nothing to do with who they play. I guess that narrows the margin of error when you're playing good teams, right? You can still be bad and beat an inferior team, but if you're losing to the Denver effing Broncos, like you can't cross any games off on the schedule as being easy. They're either going to improve drastically after this, or they're just going to sputter, and we're going to miss the playoffs for the second time in McDermott's tenure, then have some really tough conversations in the offseason. But
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for their meeting this morning, because is it a clash? Do you think it starts with Ken Dorsey firing back at McDermott, or is this maybe Ken Dorsey didn't want to work for McDermott either? If it's I get you don't ever want to give up a job where you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You're sitting behind the wheel of a Ferrari. We've used that example plenty of times, but you saw the report yesterday out of New York where Dable and Shen were like, we're not going to deal with this sort of puppeteer that the owner's trying to play, and that could trickle down from the head coach to the coordinators too, right? You don't want.
I wonder how credible that is too. It is from it's from a supposedly a New York Giants insider. I mean, it's kind of like Christmas if it's true, right? The fact that you might be able to get Dable back, but the rift between McDermott and Dable is too high. You're not going to bring Dable back as an offensive coordinator under McDermott. Like, dude, this is a real workplace. This is not a fantasy football team. If it was, then absolutely give me the all-star offensive coordinator. But you saw after the football game that they played where they barely even shook hands and didn't even talk to
each other. And Josh and Dable had
Josh gave him a hug.
Thing.
Yeah. So I had this thought too. Like, this is a pattern. 3 firings under McDermott after not having self accountability from McDermott and getting the real side of the story. Yeah. It's really hard not to think about the worst case scenario that McDermott is the problem, and that he has trouble admitting when he's wrong. And while he, at face value, seems to have a growth mindset, and that's the reason why I've had faith in this team, even when it has struggled, is because I feel like McDermott can learn from his mistakes. Is that really true, or is he is who he is? He's going to stick to his philosophy. He wants to run the ball effectively, even if it's at the detriment of his offense. He does things his way, and if you don't do it his way, you can either succeed, or if you don't, then you're thrown under the bus. And
which is not how you ever want to work, because now you're on pins and needles too. It's like, if you don't do what you needed to, I don't know. If you
you're right. Like, look at from the perspective of Joe Brady right now, the role that he's stepping into. Is Joe Brady going to stand up to McDermott if he knows, like, hey, we should be doing this? And McDermott's like, no, I want you to do this. And again, going back to, hey, McDermott might be learning the wrong lesson here. He might look at that James Cook drive with the 75 yards worth of runs on 5 plays and point to that and be like, we need to be that offense for the rest of the year. We need to have long drives. And I don't know.
The Broncos had the 32 ranked run defense. So it's like, just go do it the whole time, man. Like,
I'm just thinking, like, I don't want McDermott
rushing yards on you.
I don't want McDermott to think that you can just do that against any team, because you're gonna be in 2nd and 10, 2nd and 11, 2nd and 9, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, like, for your entire time. And that's just, or then it's just like run, hero Josh Allen, run, hero Josh Allen. And honestly, like, that's been the offense for some games, in the past few years. But
it's just so crazy that when you look at what's happening with the team right now, the Bills have 246 completions, 2nd in the NFL. 70.3% completion percentage, 2nd in the NFL. 2,600 passing yards, 4th in the NFL. 19 passing touchdowns, 1st in the NFL. 26 total touchdowns, 1st in the NFL. And that's not a good offense. Just the way that it's looking. What should it be? We have this now. If this is our floor, like, we're in the basement and the basement's flooding and we're, like, tied to the walls and we're about to drown, and Joe Brady's, like, bailing the water out with a bucket, like, we're gonna live. What does it look like for him? Because if he can figure it out just a little bit better, it's just the fine line here between these winning and losing in the NFL, it's like if you flip a button and the Bills get defensive pass interference on Taron Johnson against the Giants, and maybe they see Chris Godwin turning around and sees the ball on time. Now you're 3-7, right? Or you beat the Jets, Patriots, and Broncos, and you're 8-2, like that. And Ken Dorsey's still here. So I think you have to be bad enough to make something happen. You see that you have to have consequences for your actions, and if you're going to be decent, Ken Dorsey might still be here. If you're going to be, you have to hit bottom. You have to hit bottom to make a change in any sort of way. And if this is at our bottom, what does it look like going forward? Because you always see it. Players are either going to respond well to this, like you saw in Las Vegas, where you get a new coach come in and they ball out. When Brian Dable came in that first game against the Jets and they throw the ball 18 times in a row, he made a little bit of a splash right there. And then all of a sudden, we shift. So how's this going to shift the team? Are they going to be like Joe Brady? We've been here. We're veterans. We know what we're doing. You're just here. Like, and they're going to do their thing and stumble still? Or are they going to be like, all right, we're ready to rock and roll. You're going to fix our problems. We all know what's wrong as players. This is what we want to do, and they're going to come out firing. So I'm super curious to see now how Joe Brady tries to leave his mark, if any. And if he doesn't, then it's McDermott, right? He's the puppet for McDermott.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to know without knowing behind the scenes, and I don't want to make wild accusations. I don't think that this looks good for McDermott. I just don't like the look. I don't like the way that he handled his press conference last night. And don't get me wrong, McDermott handles these press conferences better than I ever could after such a frustrating loss. I mean, you put me in front of a mic after how pissed I was last night. I don't think that I would have reacted the right way or been like, it starts with me, guys. And those are really, after a while, that just becomes an empty answer anyway. So I don't know. It's a big change. You can only hope that this lights some kind of fire under everybody's butt. But that's what they need. Like, they have the talent. They're not injury decimated on offense. They're holding it together on defense. The defense looks inspired playing football out there. They look like they're ready to run through a wall for anybody. And at the same time, that's Sean McDermott's defense. So is Sean McDermott's, ego or super ego or whatever it is in psychological terms, is that just saying like, it's not me, it's not my fault, it's this guy's fault? Can he just not possibly blame himself for those kind of things? I don't know.
As a coach, again, high school basketball, right? It's a big difference here in the NFL. High school basketball, and
asterisk.
Most of it's middle school basketball, so it's like even more of an asterisk. But I've coached a couple hundred games in my lifetime, and I've been lucky to have a lot of talented players and winning games, often because I have the talent to help me as a coach, right? And the ones that we lose, the games that we have lost that are my fault, I know I remember them. I remember every play in the game. I remember the plays that I made that were wrong. I remember the substitutions that I made that were wrong. I remember my hands in that game that cost me that game. And I still think about them, even if it was last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And they're in my little mental notebook because you have to evolve as a coach. What's McDermott's mental notebook look like? Because right now he's got 13 seconds. He's got Josh Allen slipping on the turf. He's got the Minnesota game. He's got the Broncos game. He's got all these Bengals game. He's got all this BS. He's got the Houston game. If you want to go way back, what does his mental notebook look like? Because we've seen him evolve as a coach from ground and pound, run it out, defensive style, high-powered offense to whatever this crap is now. Like, what is he thinking? Because he is a professional. He has been in this league. He has worked under Andy Reid. He has worked with Joe Johnson, right? That's the guy? Or
Jim Johnson?
Jim Johnson, I think his name is. But all these guys. And McDermott has to know. He's been here long enough to understand. I have to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here that he knows that this is hurting him. And we haven't even talked about 12 men on the field. Oh, my God, dude. I haven't even... Dude, all right.
That's the epitome of how crazy and upsetting and confusing the universe is right now. 37 minutes in, we haven't even got to the fact that they had the game won. And it's just...
It's just
like
that
it literally feels like the universe is slapping Bills fans in the face. Like, I'm sorry, at a certain point with this craziness, you're just like, this is so statistically improbable that it's hilarious. Like, I feel like the Joker sitting here laughing at myself. Like, what the
Yeah, and it's just crazy because you have such an so everybody's kind of leaving, and I sent a text message to my Madden group chat that I'm in right when the Broncos get the balls. Like, we've seen this a few times this season.
I've seen this movie before.
I was like, Broncos are driving down, it's happening, and I'm like, here we go. And you can feel the vibe in the stadium. They scored too quick. We've seen it time and time again, and McDermott made a good play call to sack Russell Wilson. So I'm standing next to a Broncos fan. He's got a orange Peyton Manning Super Bowl jersey, and he was a nice guy. And he's like, we deserve to lose this game. Our kicker, he needs to get some redemption here because he's just totally toast us. And I look at it and I'm like, you guys are going to beat us. I was like, I promise you, like, give it a minute here, buddy. Give it a minute. And they come down. Russell just does these stupid little dump off passes, and they drive down the field. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's 52-yard field goal from here. I was like, you guys got this. And then Russell gets sacked. And I look at, and he's like freaking out when Russell Wilson goes down. He's like, how can you do this, Russell? You're a veteran. You're a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and you take a sack at the worst time of the game. And I was like, give it a minute, man. I just look at him. I was like,
that sack, he had no chance on that. I mean, he
no,
couldn't even get the ball
it was a great
off.
defensive play.
Oh my God, it was great. And then you called.
Do you remember?
The play
do you remember
after.
when? Who was it? The zero. Maybe it was Adam Gase's last game with the Jet.
It was. No. It's Greg Williams. Williams did this and got his own ass fired because it was so stupid.
And call a zero blitz on the last play of the game. And I'm like, I'm standing there and I see it happening. I'm like, oh no. All of the receivers were like open. He could have picked one. And Russell Wilson, I'm like, oh my God, I could have completed that pass. I'm looking, and I was like, no way. And Taron Johnson made a good comment. He's like, what more could I have done? If Russell Wilson makes a good throw,
that's a touchdown.
It's a touchdown, or Taron breaks it up. But because Russell underthrows it, Jerry Jeudy has to slow down. That's caused the interference, right? If you're a receiver coming back for the ball, it's a call every time. It's a call.
And Taron Johnson got his head around too.
Throw penalties. Yep, Taron got his head around, and I'm standing there. I'm like, what the frick is happening? And I look at the guy, and I'm like, they don't have a timeout, or they called the timeout, right? And they do the kneel, and they're running out, and he's like, this is not a chip shot for him. And my boss for the Bills, he walks up and he's like, here we go.
It was 47 yards, I think. At that point,
well, it went from what it went.
I think 39. It was the first one was a 47-yarder before the
penalty.
The penalty, and then obviously we knew that it was over from that.
So I'm freaking out when he misses the kick, and the Broncos guy's like got his jersey on his head next to me, just like freaking out. And my boss is like, "There's a flag," and I was like, "What?" And they called out 12 men on the field. And you know what, dude? When I started there with the Bills, this would have been maybe my first year working. No, maybe because I started with Rex when he got hired. So it was Rex's last game. Jay Ajayi, overtime. Bills, I want to say the Bills would have been like 8-7. And it was like Christmas Eve or the day after Christmas or New Year's Eve or the day after New Year's Day. And we're in overtime, and Rex Ryan gets 10 guys out on the field, and Jay Ajayi takes the ball 60-something yards in overtime, and the Dolphins kick the field goal to eliminate the Bills from the playoff contention. Rex Ryan got fired before the post-game press conference because he had 10 guys on the field. Is it his fault? Maybe. Is it the defensive coordinator's fault? Maybe. Is it whatever, but it's the head coach's fault that you can't get the right number of guys on the field. I don't care who you are, what you are, coordinator. If you're the freaking ball boy, you got to call for somebody to get off the field. Like, run on the field. Do something. Like, do something to make it happen. But that took me back to Rex Ryan. That's the world that we are living in right now, where we are a 500 football team making stupid plays like this. We are just like 90% of the NFL. You have your upper 5%, you have your lower 5%, and we are just like everybody else here, and we are nothing special, and we need to fix that because we have a special roster. But it took me back to Rex Ryan, and Rex Ryan got fired for it. So that was, if Rex Ryan got fired for that, again, we're talking about accountability. What do you do? It's like your sibling just throws a baseball through a window, gets no punishment, and you throw a baseball through the window and you get grounded. It's like, come on, mom and dad, what the hell? Like, Johnny's your favorite kid, obviously, because Tristan threw the ball through the window and I got grounded and he did it. Like,
in this scenario, it would have been Tristan who threw the ball through the window. Anyway, let's get a break in here real quick. We'll be back with some final thoughts right after this.
It's time for the Weekly Sabres Update.
Ladies and gentlemen of Buffalo sports, we live in a world for the first time in 7 years. The Buffalo Sabres to make the playoffs odds are plus 160. The Buffalo Bills odds to make the playoffs are plus 200. The Sabres have better odds to make the playoffs than the Buffalo Bills.
This has been your Weekly Sabres Update.
John, I don't know about you, but I was saying this yesterday to the guys that I work with, and I'm like, this season's done. I have no expectations of making the playoffs again this year. But it just reminded me of you hear the pundits on the media, they talk about the game that gets you eliminated shows you who you are or what you're missing the most, right? And you've seen that in the Chiefs game, coaching cost you that. You saw it in the Houston game, offense, wide receiver, didn't get you that, right? Then you go and you got Stephon Diggs. You saw that in Cincinnati, right? We played bad on defense, soft coverage, bad offense. You went and got Dalton Kincaid, Osiris Torrance. You tried to fix those problems. What did you see yesterday besides bad offense? Because this is an elimination game, basically. We're not eliminated yet, but 5 AFC losses right now. It's the worst it's going to be. So I hope. So what do you think they took away besides firing Ken Dorsey?
Well, that's what they took away from it, which is probably more important than what we think.
Oh yeah,
because that's how they shape their team moving forward. I don't know. I really think that Sean McDermott's job hangs in the balance this offseason, depending on how the rest of the season goes. I don't know. It's if you're Terry Pegula, you haven't had. I mean, your first swing at coach was Rex Ryan, right? Or was your first one was Doug Marrone? Yeah, Doug Marrone, then Rex Ryan, and all of a sudden you get gifted Sean McDermott, who has done so much for this franchise, by the way. And let's not forget about how hard it is to come by a good head coach. And I don't know. That's a reflection for the offseason, I feel like, because when you have that conversation, it's not just what's good for the team this year. It's like, how are you going to use Josh Allen's prime years? Because that is a window that you cannot extend. A coach can coach for 25 years in the NFL. Josh Allen is going to have 20 years at best, and that seems like a really long time, but there's a world not that far away where Stephon Diggs is not going to be the number one receiver on this team because he ages out, and that's still a couple years away, I hope. But we've had this nice little streak of 3 years straight of making the playoffs, right, and winning a playoff game too. Yeah. That's been a 3 straight years thing. That we were the only team to do that the past 3 years, make the playoffs and win a game. I think it's us and the Chiefs. Maybe the Chiefs have done that too, but we're not that far removed from a retooling year. And because that's the way you don't have to tank and do a total rebuild like when McDermott and Bean first got in here, but you're going to need a retooling year because of the salary cap and because of how old they are in defense at some point this year. So that's a bigger conversation. To circle back to your original point, to circle back to your original point, which I kind of strayed from. Again, it's so hard to point at one thing because this is such a multifaceted failure on the part of the Bills. It's execution, it's fumbles, poor decision making, drops, interceptions, game plan, scheme, all that stuff. It's lack of coaching accountability, and maybe that because that's the top of the pyramid you look at first. But again, it's McDermott pulling the strings here, him and Bean. So it's like, what do we point at? It doesn't matter because it matters where they're pointing, and if they're not pointing the finger at themselves, then that's not going to change unless Terry thinks you need to change. And Terry is not necessarily the person that you want making huge football decisions. You want him to make a decision every 15 years about the coach, maybe. Like that's what you want Terry for, because I don't know. Look at the track record. Like, we got lucky with Don Granado. We hired Ralph Kruger. Maybe that wasn't Terry's decision directly. I don't know. That's an entirely different conversation.
Well,
but I don't know. I don't know what to take from this game, because you can't just point at one single thing. It's so many things, and that's frustrating in and of itself, because we can't be like, hey, flip this switch, fix this, we'll be good. It's like, it's too many things have to go right. Too many things have to turn around. And it's just momentum. It's team psychology. If they're flying on all cylinders and they're feeling good, the games are going to go better. But they're in their heads. They're making mistakes. They're afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to fail, and they're failing. So,
Well, the part that's interesting about what Terry Pegula's role in this is he didn't want to be embarrassed, right? The Bills were an embarrassment, and Doug Marrone embarrassed the Bills by not showing up and texting the players that he was going to leave, right? He got embarrassed by losing to a 2-14 Raiders team to miss the playoffs. And Rex Ryan comes in, and it's a show from the get-go, right? Changes one of the best defenses that we've ever had here in Buffalo, number 1 overall, and changes it all. And then, again, 10 guys on the field, losing in overtime to miss out on the playoffs. He embarrassed Terry Pegula. Sean McDermott, it should feel embarrassed after the game yesterday. To lose with 12 guys on the field, it's embarrassing. And maybe if you have a couple more of these throughout the end of the season, you have a fluky loss to the Chiefs again, you add in maybe a loss to the Dolphins to end the season, maybe Terry's embarrassed again. And you either die a hero or you live long enough to be the villain, according to Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins. I think he quotes that. So I always like that quote. You have to read the room, right? You have to figure it out. And
Brandon, can you read that quote one more time for the people in the back?
You either die a hero or you live long enough to be the villain. All right, and we're living it right now. And there's just a window of time here that you have a couple of guys that you could have as a head coach. You don't want to miss out on Ben Johnson. I've said his name 1,000 times, the Lions offensive coordinator. You don't want to miss out on a guy like this, because guess what? Look at Atlanta. They've never once recovered from choosing Robert Quinn over Kyle Shanahan. And now they have a mess on the offensive side of the ball. Bijan Robinson, who you invested a huge first-round pick in, barely getting any touches. And they have never once recovered. They chose the wrong guy. And now Kyle Shanahan's leading an awesome offense, and his disciples have his handprints all over the league with Miami and Houston and all of these guys. I see Anthony Lynn is now on Kyle Shanahan's coaching staff. He's the assistant running
backs quality control, special teams something.
And guess what? He's going to get a job somewhere, and he's going to have a top 5 offense at some point.
Oh my gosh!
You got to find these guys, and you have to get the right one. And if you want to make
what's
life
Perry
easier,
Fuel up? What's Perry Fuel up to these days?
Let's find out. I will search his name in Google. What's his name? Perry what?
Perry Fuel. You don't remember Perry Fuel?
Yeah, I remember the intern guy, but how do you spell his last name? It's not F-U-E-L.
I think it's Fewell or something like that.
Yep, Fewell. Finishing career as the interim head coach of the Carolina Panthers in 2019.
That's right. Forgot about that. All these guys come back around. Yeah. Anyway, Brandon, any final thoughts here before we wrap up this really long one here?
Yeah, actually, I got one. Bills fans, this is new for you, all right? 10 years ago, when I started working at this franchise, we were bad. We were watching Matt Castle. We were watching Thad Lewis. We were watching Tyler Thigpen. We were watching anybody else. You want to throw another one in there? I don't even know. Who's on that list?
How far back do you want to go?
Kevin Cobb,
Trent Edwards, J.P. Lossman.
And you know what? The
Jeff
people
Toole.
I forgot about it.
Tool time, baby.
Don't ever disrespect that show by calling Jeff Toole Time, man. Don't
you mean Home Improvement?
Disrespect Home Improvement. Yeah, don't disrespect
That's funny.
Home Improvement. But This is where you're going to earn your stripes because I've had our gripes with our fan base the last few years where these young folk with no hurt, no pain. I had a conversation with a 9-year-old kid yesterday. He was talking to a bunch of Broncos fans, and this Broncos fan, see what you get as a Bills fan, man. Look at this. I got a Super Bowl patch. You don't got one of those. Join our ship. Leave the Bills. And the kid's like debating it, and I go to him and I was like, listen, man, this is how it is. All right, like this happens. You have to go through this as a Bills fan, and we are having a whole generation of fans right now in it. Right? You had 13 seconds. You had all these games. All right, it's more magnitude now because we're good, and the losses hurt more because there's more on the line. But when EJ Manuel comes in and throws 3 picks and blows a game, right, it doesn't really matter because we weren't going to win the Super Bowl anyways. But
right.
You know what, Bills fans, if you want to call yourself, we got the label of best fans in the league, or one of the best fan bases in the league, Bills Mafia, when we were okay? We got them when we were bad. And now it's your turn to carry the torch of the past generation that did it through the drought. You're getting punched in the face, all right? Take these punches and show up to the game against the Jets and be loud, be respectful. Make it hard for the Jets. You need to pick these guys up right now. And I mean, I was talking to people yesterday. They're like, I've had season tickets for 6 years. I'm not coming back. And I was like, I got people in my wheelchair that have had season tickets for 62 years. And they are still here. They've been through it. So, Bills Mafia, earn your stripes again, all right? Show up to these games. Don't bail out on these guys. We need you now more than ever. Show up, be loud, and don't give up on these guys until we are picking first overall again. Then we can throw the towel. But
in our generation of fans, like you and I were both born 95, 96, we'll never know what the previous generation experienced because that, above all, you're never going to top that level of pain. And maybe that's why this is kind of the label attached to this franchise, right? It's like pain, just pain. Yeah. And everyone who was a fan in those 90, that doesn't make, comparison is the thief of joy, right? But
yeah,
you don't want to make yourself feel better by looking at something else that's bad. I mean, I guess if that helps your perspective, maybe, and if you're looking at life instead of football, that might help you a little bit. But it can always be worse. It can always be worse.
Yeah.
We're 5-5. It could always be worse. And I would think about how 12, 13-year-old me would be looking at a 5-5 season because that was a common occurrence.
So happy.
We'd be like, oh my God, we only have to win 4 more games, and we could win. We could get a wild card game if a tiebreaker falls the right way at 9-7.
Yeah.
And if you're not looking at this Bills team the right way, their ceiling is so much higher than any of those other Bills teams. Well, it could be worse. Like we could be the Bills team that again, we said this last episode, they could be 10-0 right now. And then they could hit their woes. It
could be like the Steelers with old Big Ben, right? You're 13-0 and nobody cares. You suck.
Because you're a glass house and you were bound to exit the first round of the playoffs anyway. Where it's like you look at this team and you wonder what's wrong because of the talent that they have. And so that potential for explosiveness is always going to be there. And that's not to say that they're going to go on a run and be 8-0 the rest of the season, which they could. And of course, I'll hope for that. But it doesn't mean that they're resigned to play the exact way that they have so far this season. And it really is. It's like we can talk about scheme. We can talk about EPA per play. We can talk about fumbles, all that stuff. But what it really comes down to is it's momentum. Football is a game of momentum. It's momentum within games. It's momentum within your season. And we've seen this team get hot for long stretches before. They could do it now. They couldn't. They could. But again, we're at 5-5. The story of the season still isn't written yet. They fired the offensive coordinator, and the story of the season isn't written yet. It could still go 2 ways. Their playoff percentage is down. I'm more hopeful than the playoff percentage, but that's always been the case, and I'm sure it is with a lot of Bills fans. So I don't know. All that matters is you get in because the NFL playoffs are a wild place. It's single elimination, and all you got to do is win the game in front of you and win the last one that you play.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's also interesting when you look at it, if we want to flip the script here, talk about narrative writing, and the Bills go on a run. Now your team, they don't want to play in the playoffs. Nobody wants to play the Bills. No one wants to face Josh Allen in the playoffs. You win a couple games. Now you're a story, right? Now you did this turnaround. Somebody came in, a little fire under somebody's butt. Boom. Now you got momentum. You start rolling, and that whole positive mind speak that you talked about earlier gets into effect here. But just on Twitter, I'm looking. Quentin Spain quote tweeted Adam Schefter's firing of Ken Dorsey, and he says the wrong person. So he's shooting a shot at Sean McDermott there, saying Sean McDermott should have been fired instead of Ken Dorsey, former player from that locker room.
He's on the Bengals still, right?
Well, I have no idea if he exists.
I think he's still on the Bengals. The Bengals paid him a lot, actually. But anyway, well, we got to wrap it up because we're at an hour here. Yeah. But you guys know where to find us on Twitter and all that crap. Whatever. Shoot us your thoughts. And again, I want to give another shout out to those listeners who approached.
Yeah, thank you.
Like,
you're nice people.
We're doing this because we like talking Bills, and we're remote. We don't get to talk about this too much. We're not trying to build anything. We're not trying to make money. This is a huge time investment, for both of us that obviously doesn't pay dividends on our end. We just love the Bills that much. We grew up talking about the Bills, and it's our way to connect with each other still on a regular basis, even though we live 700 miles apart. Same with me and Pat and both of you guys, because you guys are both in Rochester and Buffalo now too. So I ran into the other room as soon as you called me to tell my significant other about that story too, because it's that just means so much, especially on weeks where you're sitting there and you're like, I really don't want to do the podcast after this. Like, I'm dreading it after the game last night. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to sit and edit it. I don't want to upload it. I don't want to think about the Bills for the next week.
Yeah.
But, just getting in there and like talking about it a little bit, like I already feel better a little bit. Hopefully this helped someone else. But yeah, I'm glad that story happened. Yeah.
And like you said, we might enter a different era here where we are covering a losing team, which is something that we have not done since we were youngins and back to our roots. And you know what, dude? That's where all of our friendships were made. And these younger fans are going to get a taste of it, and you have to make the best of it. We can be pissed all we want, but you're going to show up still, and you're going to watch these games. You're going to go with your buddies, go with your families. But just to have those nice words, like it is. Again, I work 10% on this compared to what you do, so it is still a job sometimes, but it's nice to hear that people listen and care, and we appreciate it, because we wouldn't be anything without them. So it was a nice feeling to leave that this is still a game, and we do it for, why do you go tailgate? Why do you go to these games with your buddies? Why do you do it, right? It's because of what you have from it, and that's the bottom line no matter what. So maybe Ken Dorsey disagrees today because he has a different role than we do. But I could sit here and
who knows? Maybe Ken Dorsey's pulling a what's the punter's name? Maybe he's in the parking lot next week tailgating with everybody. You never know. Probably not. But
oh man,
different. Who was that punter? Can you help me with that? Remember they cut him, and he was the next week he was in the parking lot tailgating with everybody.
That's funny. That's what I would do. You get a week off, man. You go enjoy it. Maybe at a different stadium than the team that cut you, but
yeah. Oh man, I think it was a number 9 or something like that. I can't. Last name with an S. Anyway, can't remember.
That's all right.
Anyway, we'll be back on Friday. We'll make some game picks. Take a look at Brandon's bets and some self-reflection and stuff like that. I still think that was such a good bet. Like if it was good. Still after
the Bills
after
score.
Losing, if the Bills. Yeah. Anyway,
one more time.
Coulda, woulda,
Talk
shoulda.
about bad bets, dude. James Cook, he has 2 fumbles. I lost 2 points. I lost my fantasy match by 0.6, less than a point, because James Cook fumbled.
Rough.
Yeah.
So rough.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Life moves on.
That's
all right. Have a great week, everybody. Like I said, we'll be back on Friday, and thanks for listening. Go Bills.
Go Bills.